2024 is shaping up to be a great year to be a Wolverine fan. Not only are we getting an update to the X-Men animated series, but we're also getting the highly anticipated Deadpool and Wolverine movie coming out later this year, which is also going to bring a slew of new 3D printable files. And speaking of, I don't think I've ever 3D printed a set of Wolverine claws. Now, there are a zillion different 3D printable Wolverine claw options for you out there. However, today I'm going to be printing two different sets. The first one here that we're going to be taking a look at is actually a retractable set of claws. And to do this, it requires printing a bunch of different parts, including some 3D printed springs along with the claws that I'm going to be printing on the Elegoo Neptune 4 Plus 3D printer that just so happens to be the sponsor of today's video. Elegoo is the maker of the Neptune series of 3D printers, ranging from the Neptune 4, the Neptune 4 Plus, and the Neptune 4 Max, which are affordable, fast printing 3D printers. I'm also going to be printing for the very first time with their Rapid PET G, which so far is laying down super smooth on the Neptune 4 Plus. And the reason why I'm printing with PET G over PLA for this project is because we're going to be using these print and place springs for the project, and I want to make sure that they hold up to any of the pressure that's applied to them. And what's great about these prints from Sean Meek is that they only take a few hours to print at 0.2 layer height. And I printed the claws laying flat on the build plate just to try and make it as best quality as I could. You could optionally print those vertically if you really wanted to, but with the back and forth motion of the bed slinging action of the Neptune 4 Plus, I'm not entirely sure how the quality would hold up as it reaches the top of the claws, but this should be nice and clean for what I'm looking for here. Now, there are 4 different trigger files that you can print with this project, which I printed here, and I wasn't entirely sure why I needed all 4, but I quickly realized that these are just different size options for you to work with. I'm going to be working with the largest available size option, and then I can always swap it out if I need one that's smaller. And the first thing that we're going to do is route the one hook end of the trigger through the stopper that we also printed. The next part's a little bit tricky, but you're going to take the smaller springs and make sure that the pegs are pointing inward and route them through the opening of the stopper. Now, if you can't get it through, there is a little hook there on the end of the spring. You can use a pair of flat shears to just trim that away to more easily slide that through. And if need be, you can glue those into the actual stopper. Next, we're going to take the flat piece that has the X logos on them, and on the 2 upward facing pegs, one of them has square holes. We're then going to take the small trigger piece that we just previously assembled that has the smaller springs. The springs have those interfacing pegs. We're going to insert the pegs into the hole openings there of those squares so that the trigger is facing top and leaning towards the bottom. Next is the fun part. We're going to take our 3D printed claws and slide them through the opening from the back side, moving the breaker or the stopper there out of the way and trying to maneuver the claws through the opening there. You can then take the part that has the larger springs with the pegs on the top and mount those pegs through the X openings underneath your claws, and then connect the back of the claws to those larger springs via the pegs. You can then take the corresponding bottom plate and align the holes and slot those all together. I guess at this point you could really super glue these if you really wanted to have a nice secure combination. Okay, it does mention in the directions to, with the case installed, hold everything together and then pull the claws back so that it's fully retracted here. You can then slide the hand grip on from behind. That is pretty cool. You don't need any super glue for this. The hand grip is going to keep that all secured in place. That's really cool. All right, let's give this a try. Oh. Of course, I just broke it. All right, I just applied the tiniest amount of hot glue into where the smaller spring opening was. It was pulling the spring out of the slot here. What did I screw up here? I think it's this are just either that or it's too much friction. Like it's not pulling these in enough. Maybe I need to wind up the springs more. All right, another possibility of why that wasn't working is because when I put in a little bit of hot glue, it looked like, I think the hot glue seeped into the area where the claws were extending through and preventing it from extending, which is why it was catching. All right, let's give it another go. Oh my gosh. That is so cool. All right, so I didn't have to replace any of the parts. It was just the hot glue. The hot glue was getting in the way of the actual springs. One other thing that I did was when I reinserted the larger springs, I torqued them ever so slightly and then inserted them into the notches to give them a little bit more torque for the spring action. This is so cool. Like if you have a 3D printer and you love Wolverine, I can't stop playing. This is so cool. One thing that I might end up doing is scaling this up ever so slightly. I do have not the largest hands in the world, so you might want to print out the hand pieces first and then see how the actual hand grip fits your hand, if it actually fits, and then scale everything up according to that. This is so wild. I'll have links to the files for this down below, but I'm not done yet. We have one other amazing 3D printing project for Wolverine and some claws, and this time, so I went and printed some of the base pieces for the stand on my Neptune 4 Plus in some Elegoo Black PLA, and for the actual arm and hand and claws, I ended up using my Elegoo Jupiter SE and my Elegoo Saturn 3 Ultra. And I believe the Jupiter SE files took about 12 hours to print, and the Saturn 3 Ultra was about 4 or 5 hours if I remember correctly. And what's really cool is I'm trying out a new tool that I have from Ember Makes for removing your prints from your build plate. That's a really long, thin, flat file that allows you to really easily get underneath your prints and free them from the build plate. And then it was just a matter of cleaning up the prints and removing the supports. And my resin prints are looking really good. However, I'm not going to be painting them just yet. I do need to go through the process of sanding these to be a good bit smoother, and then I'm going to get them glossed black and then chromed out. But one thing I wanted to mention to you is I mistakenly made a rookie mistake here. I did not angle the claws further. And that's that I had the claws perpendicularly aligned with the screen instead of angling them slightly. And that would have prevented some of the layer stepping that I'm seeing in the claws. Nothing that I can't smooth out with a little bit of sanding and painting. And obviously I can't go ahead and get this thing assembled without some kind of large glass or acrylic case. Now I did consider ordering one online. However, I went on a scavenger hunt around here where I live and ended up at Home, which is a large at-home store for different goods. And they had in their vase section what they call glass, but it's a large acrylic vase. And it's 36 inches tall. And I think it was only about 40 bucks, something like that. Now I could, if I really needed to, I can cut off the bottom of this. So I can try to carefully tape it off and cut it. I don't want to do that because I have a feeling I'll just end up screwing it up. So what I ended up doing was taking a whole bunch of measurements of this. And before I printed the actual top and bottom, I took those measurements, modified the files from Nico ever so slightly so that here is one that's completely hollow that I can just sit this directly inside of. The same thing goes for the other portion of this where it has the opening where the actual arm is going to be standing up in. I can now slide this perfectly into that opening. Now, because I'm planning on going ahead and sanding and painting this, I don't want a permanent hold for this. So what I'm just going to use is a hot glue gun to get everything secured in place within this display. I believe I should be able to just have the arm freely resting in the stand without any hot glue. But for this upper hand portion here that's connecting to the forearm, I'm definitely going to want to glue that in place. I'm also going to hot glue the claws temporarily here to the hand until I can figure out how I want these to be positioned, and everything's painted. All right, fingers crossed this all fits. Oh my gosh, this is looking so good. This is way too friggin' cool. Honestly, I'm so happy with this display purchase there from At Home. This fits this perfectly. I'm really considering printing some kind of lift risers for the arm so it's lifted up ever so slightly so it's a little bit more balanced between the top and bottom of this display. And I'm also considering building in some LEDs to either shine down or up on it. Let me know in the comments what you think, what I should do with this to help illuminate the Wolverine arm inside this jar here beyond just sanding and chroming it out. I also want to say a big thank you to all my Patreon supporters for your continued support of me making goofy projects like this here on the interwebs. If you're interested in things like the 3 printer settings that I used for these Wolverine claws or the actual Resin 3 print settings that I used, you'll find those over in my Patreon. And let me know of any other amazing Wolverine prints that you know of, because yeah, this one right here might have been the coolest thing that I've printed in a very long time. This is just going to make for one amazing display in my studio. Hey, thanks so much for watching all, and I'll see you next time. Bye now. This is going to be my new fidget toy right here. This is too much fun. Way too cool.